What if KELDEO was in Gen 1 OU? Kinda surprised I haven't gone over KELDEO yet. I'm not sure why I haven't. I know it's been suggested a few times, and I've done Terrakion, but to be honest, do not expect the other two, because KELDEO and Terrakion are by far my favorites. And I think KELDEO might be more interesting here. Terrakion was good because it was a fighting type, sure, but it had the rock typing. So it had that very valuable normal resistance, as well as having good stab against Zapdos and the ice types. KELDEO here is a little bit different. Its attack is nowhere near as good. In fact, one might even say it's really mid. But as a compromise, you instead don't have an earthquake weakness, which is really good, and you just have really good stats for mix attacking. Hydro Pump hits really hard, and at first, I was going to assume that KELDEO only really wants to go for Surf, since it's more accurate, and since you're mainly using it for the Rhydon matchup anyways. But I was wrong. Hydro Pump, it's just like Walking Wake. When you hit it, it hits so hard. It is like one of the strongest attacks in the game. Not as strong as Articuno, I don't think. Or wait, is Articuno 125? If it is, then yeah. Hydro Pump replaces Blizzard for the strongest non-boosted special move in the game. And you have a 108 speed stat as well, which is really unfortunate in some ways, since you're barely slower than Gengar and Tauros. But at the same time, since it's basically their speed rate, you have just a really good crit rate as well. So, having a stronger stab than Articuno, and having a better crit rate, that alone is terrifying. But along with that, you're just a Sword Stance user. So say it with me, KELDEO becomes the new best Sword Stance user of Gen 1 OU. But this time, along with having a really powerful Hyper Beam, he also has Double Kick. Now for the Terrakion video, I didn't use his signature, Secret Sword, and I'm doing the same thing here with KELDEO, because I feel like both of them are already strong enough to where they can make the fighting type work even without a busted signature move. And in Gen 1, I would say literally any fighting move of any sort that's above 60 base power is considered a broken move. The Gen 1 meta is just not supposed to operate with strong fighting moves. But luckily, Double Click is not even that bad. Because of how great your speed stat is, Double Kick has a really good chance of critting. And for a reminder, if multi-hit moves get a crit in Gen 1, both of them will do double damage, which is the main reason why you would always use Double Kick instead of something like Submission or Low Kick, assuming KELDEO had those. Because, well, for one, versus Low Kick, I think a Fire Out just does more damage, if I remember correctly, even if you don't get a flinch. But just for those chances when you get a crit, it does so much to stuff like Chansey, Tauros, or even Snorlax, to where I think it's almost always worth it. And with Sword Stance, one Sword Stance basically means you're hitting a little bit harder than a crit, or just in general, you can view it as just basically getting guaranteed crits, since they basically do the same amount of damage. Not to mention Sword Stance with Hyper Beam, as usual, nukes pretty much everything, except for Rhydon and Gengar. And Rhydon, as you can imagine, is scared of any water move, and Gengar is actually really annoyed by Hydro Pump. It does a surprising amount of damage, but unlike Walking Wake, you're unfortunately weak to both Psychic and Thunderbolt, which is unfortunate. But as far as fighting types go, KELDEO seems to have it pretty good. If it had a signature, there's definitely no doubt it would be OU, but as you see now, it looks like it's pretty good. I do not really see KELDEO struggling that much. You have like some unwinnable matchups, but they're very manageable. And since you are just really strong as a mix attacker, and especially with Hydro Pump of all things, it is really hard to switch into KELDEO. Zam doesn't want to get hit with a crit, and even Starmie and Executor, they don't exactly want to just take a critical Hydro Pump, and if KELDEO has a Sword Stance up, Hyper Beam could do legitimate damage to both of them. They would both probably win the 1v1, or at the very least Starmie would, because it's always faster. But I figured I'd just bring it up. Let's get the replays. Sorry, let's get on to the replays, shall we? Starting off with the boy himself, Tauros. And Double Kick with a crit does a lot of damage. And looking at that damage range, I'm pretty sure a non-crit would be like... I couldn't tell if it's between... probably closer to a 2-hit, but even then, it doesn't really matter. Because for this next replay, I decided to go for Hydro Pump instead. And this is the replay that made me realize, oh wait, no, this ain't no gimmick. KELDEO legitimately has some good niches in Gen 1. Just look at that. That did 60%. You probably would rather go for Hydro Pump on Tauros instead of Double Kick, in all honesty. So over Double Kick's damage ranges is irrelevant. Because regular Hydro Pump, unlike Kabutops' Hydro Pump, KELDEO's will always 2-shot, and with Tauros' crit rate, which you basically have, you better believe a crit's gonna be an Oko. So Tauros actually needs to fear KELDEO, and it can't really rely on just being a Tauros and just getting lucky with crits, because it has a lot to lose, and it can lose everything very quickly. Now for Snorlax, it's pretty easy to set up. However, if you're paralyzed, you probably lose the 1v1. Because Double Kick does a lot of damage, sure, but Snorlax can at least tank one Sword Stance or crit, and then always kill you. And then Reflect is just as annoying, if not even more annoying. Technically, you can still go for more Sword Stance boost, and luckily, and this is probably the one good thing about its attack being so low, it doesn't need to worry about using 2 Sword Stance and already being a 999. It can go for 3 Sword Stance if it really wants to. And as you saw there, even Hydro Pump is a 3-hit KO. So honestly, maybe it's just better to go for Double Kick and then see if it goes for Reflect or attacking move. I'm not sure. Either way, Snorlax could go either way. And then Chansey. Unfortunately, you don't have the damage ranges that you really want to. Double Kick there is barely not a 2-hit KO, and there are many Chansey sets with both Reflect and Thunderbolt. Now granted, KELDEO does have a huge crit rate, and I do believe that it's probably enough to Oko Chansey, so Chansey probably has a lot to fear still. But keep in mind, Chansey also has Thunderbolt a lot of time, so that's very annoying. But as you can see there, it's only a 3-hit KO, so probably not the worst thing in the world. Also, Counter Chansey. I didn't go over it here, but for a reminder that Counter only uses the last hit used. It doesn't count both of them. So Chansey, assuming you got a crit or a Sword Stance boost, it probably would still do a lot of damage, but I don't think Counter would actually Oko you. So ironically, I feel like KELDEO just makes Counter Chansey less viable. Since if you go for Counter, you're probably not killing it, which means that you're probably going to lose all the time. And luckily, when with Sword Stance, you almost Oko it, but then again, that might be seen as part of the problem, where you can't even just Oko it with just a single Sword Stance. Granted, what does Chansey do afterwards? Can't really heal, but even in this replay, Chansey managed to get a lucky paralysis off. And KELDEO really doesn't like paralysis. It's not the worst thing in the world, it can definitely handle it, but your KELDEO is not going to do much once it gets paralyzed. Though it'll probably do a little bit more than Gengar, but I don't really know for sure. This one I probably don't need to go over too much. Other than that, Hydro Pump is surprisingly a 3-hit KO. This is why I say that nothing really wants to switch into KELDEO. Nothing wants to switch in because worst case scenario, or I guess worst case scenario, you're switching it up with like Starmie, Executor, or Slowbro. So those are probably safe switches no matter what. But Slowbro has his own problems to deal with in the KELDEO matchup. And even Starmie, with a crit, it probably does decent damage. And as you can see here, it does good damage to Zam as well. So if Zam's paralyzed, it actually might need the Fear KELDEO. And this is why you need to use Hydro Pump instead of Surf, by the way. Because Surf I don't think will do as much damage there. And with Cloyster, might be a physical tank, but unfortunately, KELDEO resists both your stabs. And what's even more hilarious is Sword Stance, you can eventually out-damage Cloyster's defenses. Not to mention with Hydro Pump, and with Cloyster not having the best special, even Hydro Pump could do decent damage, especially with a crit. So Cloyster, the only thing it can really do is just explode, which might not even happen. So that's good. That's definitely really good for Cloyster, or not Cloyster, for KELDEO. As you can see there, a crit is actually a 2-hit KO, and Double Kick does a lot of damage when you get Sword Stance boost. So KELDEO has it pretty good. I think it's actually really good when we have a physical attacker that doesn't care about Cloyster. Executor, on the other hand, yeah, there's... What do you do here? Granted, with Sword Stance, Hyper Beam is a 2-hit KO, same with a crit, but you're not risking that. Why would you? I guess it means that with KELDEO being a late game cleaner, Executor can't really switch in the late game, especially if it's already been paralyzed, taking a lot of damage. But that's not really counting how the actual 1v1 matchup goes. But just keep that in mind. KELDEO would always be used as a late game cleaner, so even for some of these replays where it's not doing the best, and even then, I'd argue KELDEO is doing pretty good so far, it is not an accurate representation on how it would actually go. And Gengar, I kind of forgot about Thunderbolt somehow, so maybe this actually isn't super accurate, because considering Psychic is barely not a, what's it called, 2-hit KO, I imagine Thunderbolt with its extra 5 base power probably is, but I'm still gonna put this in could go either way, because Hydro Pump still does a lot of damage, and it's just as likely for KELDEO to get a crit than Gengar. So, I think even if Thunderbolt ever so slightly will always make it in Gengar's favor, Gengar can't exactly switch in, not to mention a crit can just ruin Gengar's day at any point. So I don't know, like maybe, my gut's telling me that I need to move to bad matchup, but I want to keep it in quick with away. Not so much for Jolteon. It's not a bad matchup, nor is it go either way. It's just unwinnable. Is anyone surprised? I don't think you guys are. But I guess KELDEO can technically hurt it a lot with Hydro Pump, especially with a crit. And assuming there's no Woefully Kiss, which I think is actually perfectly reasonable, because like I said, KELDEO is always going to be a late game cleaner. Both Psychic and Hydro Pump two-shot each other, but KELDEO is faster, so could go either way. But obviously, watch out for Woefully Kiss, and watch out for crits, or freeze. But that actually is another benefit for KELDEO. The fact that it can always switch in and resist Blizzard. You love to see it. This you don't love to see, however, because Hydro Pump, like there's a reason we call it Hydro Miss. It's garbage, and it's actually why the matchup with Rhydon is always unwinnable. Yeah, that's right, because as we all know, when you rely on Hydro Pump, it's not gonna hit. It's just how it works. I'm sorry. Or actually, I'm not sorry, because I am literally the ground back. I love it when Rhydon stonks are at an all-time high. Not so much Slowbro. I'm particularly unfond when Slowbro does really well. But with some other Sword Stance users have gone over, they can technically set up an Oko with Hyper Beam before Slowbro can fully set up. Is KELDEO one of them? No, not really. A Double Kick does decent damage. Then again, that's at 968 attacks, maybe not. Thunder Wave means sooner or later it's probably going to get a free hit on you. And KELDEO would have killed there, I imagine. Because regular Hyper Beam does a crazy amount of damage, but it's not an Oko. Slowbro still survives with like 10 or so HP left, given damage ranges. So, this is kind of a bad matchup. I think so. Even though it plays like it can go could go either way. But I'm pretty sure it's bad. Then again, I guess Slowbro can't switch in. Because if Slowbro takes some chip damage, then it can definitely go in Keldeo's favor. Not so much with Starmie. Starmie's faster. Psychic is a 2-hit KO, because with Stab. And Thunderbolt's a 3-hit KO. It's just like Hyper Beam. But one of those is significantly more spammable than the other. And last but not least, we have Zapdos. And to my surprise, just unlike Jolteon, I don't think this is unwinnable. But that's mostly because, unlike with Jolteon, Keldeo is faster. So Hydro Pump can do pretty good damage. It's a 3-hit KO. So with a crit, you might be able to win. But then again, it's still a Zapdos. It can still paralyze you. Thunderbolt with a crit, as well as I imagine Dropeg with a crit, are Okos. Because Dropeg's also super effective. But I feel like since Keldeo can actually outspeed and do real damage to it, I don't think I can put it unwinnable. Because unwinnable, I give the tier that name for a reason, you know? But speaking of which, here is the tier list. And it doesn't look as bad as it looks. Or it's not as bad as it looks. Because, like, even though there's a few things in unwinnable, it's not even that bad. Since at least half of them don't even want to switch in on Keldeo. But I guess you can also argue Zapdos being winnable too, but I'm not sure. You can also argue Zapdos being could go either way, but I think that's kind of stretching it. Still though, really good. It's strange. Keldeo is a fighting type that can kinda 1v1 the special attackers. At the very least, Shinx and Gengar. And Swallow too to a degree. Or a few of them, actually. Only really Exeggutor and Starmie. And even with those two, they do kind of fear Sword Stance boosted Hyper Beam. I talked super quickly there, I apologize for that. But overall, Keldeo, kinda wish I went over him sooner. Because this was pretty interesting to look at. But what do you think? Do you think Keldeo would be good in Gen 1 OU? Do you think of overselling it? Do you think it'd be easy for people to work around him? Or do you think he would legitimately be a really good mix attacker? Let me know in the comments below. But until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.